were very interested in why, what those flashpoints were, both from the side of the Earth Liberation Front folks. What was it that made them decide that engaging in these huge, multi-million-dollar, very scary arsons was a good tactic? And similarly, from the point of view of the police, what was it that made them think it was reasonable to cut somebody's pant leg so that you could spray pepper spray into their groin, or hold their eyeballs open their eyelids open as you applied pepper spray? And I think that it was a combination of what the police captain says, which was, we are human and we react emotionally sometimes, even when we shouldn't. So, I think there was an element of that. I think there was an element of what was crazy is that footage of the people having their eyelids held open as they were pepper spray was applied, that was shot by the law enforcement folks themselves as evidence that they were following policy. They wanted to make it clear that they weren't just sort of hauling off and hitting people or just acting irresponsibly, that they had warned the people before they did it, that they'd put on rubber gloves before they did it, and that, that they were doing what they thought they were supposed to do. So there was a detachment that developed over the, years of animosity between these two sides, where they'd completely dehumanized each other to the point where somebody would inflict that kind of suffering on another person and film it to show that they were doing the right thing.
I think also one of the things about violence in this film is that you can look from both sides. For the movements themselves, like by engaging in an act like arson, I think they had trouble building movements because of that. I think there was a sense of not building a broader circle. And I think for the government as well, when you engage in that kind of activism, you create this radicalization in people that works against your intention to sort of guide society and keep things in check.
A burning question back there in the white shirt in the middle. Just shout it out.
No, I got rid of the mic.
Oh, thank you. Two quick things. The first one is, I always thought of Earth First. Can you explain the distinction between the Earth First and ELF? And second of all, since you kind of had insider knowledge in a way to the movement, do you have a sense that these tactics, or even more violent tactics, might reappear?
So I think on the Earth First thing, it's a very, it's not a straight line, but you could say that Earth First is the predecessor of ELF, and that it certainly came before the ELF. Earth First was a movement that essentially started in the late 80s, early 80s, and their interest was they did engage in acts of property damage. Some folks in Earth First were okay with that, other folks weren't, and there was a debate within that movement. But the ELF folks came along a few years later and said, you're just not doing it enough, and you're not making change in the way that fast enough, and so we're going to step it up to the next level.
Do you have a sense that just after the Bieder-Meinhof, that there was the second generation, the Bieder-Meinhof that was even more violent? Is there a sense that might happen or appear with the ELF?
My sense is that there are arguments happening within sort of the protest world right now over. I don't think the violence. They don't consider property destruction to be violent. So I would be surprised if people are talking about violence meaning targeting people. But I know that there are debates right now about property destruction. Is it an effective way of getting media attention? Is it an effective way of punishing corporations that you hate? And on the other side, people saying, no, this destroys our credibility and completely pushes our allies away from us. So I know that is a debate that's happening, and I think my sense is that in the coming year, we will see, things like the Black Bloc appearing at protests and things like that. But I think it's a big argument, and that that represents a small portion of the current protest movement.
And the ELF has not stopped activity. They still have continued. Folks have continued to claim arsons and other actions in the name of the ELF, but not at the level that it once was in the late '90s.